Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. As is our want on Good Fridays, we have Eli Lake with us. Eli writes for the Free Press. He's the host of the Breaking History podcast. Eli, I want to cover with you a history series that is not your own. Have you watched Death by Lightning?
Not yet, but it's on my list. Everyone tells me it's fantastic.
It is, but in it, one of the characters from the James Garfield assassination saga asks, and I won't spoil it beyond that, will history remember me? And it's an interesting question because it's set in 1880, 145 years ago. 145 years from now, history is going to be compressed to like 2 paragraphs for our era. Who's going to be in those 2 paragraphs, Eli?
Donald Trump, for sure. And that's the only sure name that I can think of. I think the legacy of Trump's going to be enormous.
I think Trump and Xi Jinping has been my answer. Jim Talon
Yeah.
also suggested that the remaking of the Middle East will be the story of the first quarter of,
You know what? Netanyahu,
our
I think.
century. It
Benjamin
might be
I think,
Netanyahu
will-
too.
Yeah.
Now I
think
want to
Netanyahu
go
will be
to
there.
a question. I expected that answer. Now I want to go.
Yeah.
You posted earlier today, if you are not a Zionist, then something is deeply wrong with you. I agree with that, but I want to know your reasoning and I'll tell you mine.
Very clearly, because Zionism is simply the belief that the Jewish people have a right to a state that now already exists. That I just want to reframe it. I've become so frustrated. You caught me today in the middle of writing a script and an editorial that will be out at the Free Press soon about the horrible attack at the Park East Synagogue in Manhattan and the absolutely chilling response, in my view, from the mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani. So it was on my mind, and I want to reframe it. I mean, the idea that Zionism is a toxic concept when it just means Israel should exist, a state that continues to exist. That if you are an anti-Zionist, you want to destroy the only Jewish state in the world, to me, that should be the toxic position, not the other way around. And it is just, I'm despondent that the left has largely succeeded, at least in younger generations, in kind of, reframing what that word means.
No, I am a Zionist because I like strong allies for the United States. But I
Yep.
also point out to people who are so-called anti-Zionists, are you against the Republic of Ireland because it was a native people ruled by a colonial power? Are you against India and Pakistan, countries that are independent sovereign countries that were ruled by a colonial power? Walk around Africa, and why not the first peoples of the Middle East, the Jews, with their home country? And do they ever confront that? Eli, does anyone ever come up with the fact that the archaeology, when we do our land acknowledgments in Israel, they ought to begin with, we want to acknowledge the Israelis?
No, of course not. I mean, listen. This is a longer conversation, but they are manipulating the debate with a bunch of things that are not true and selective cherry picking of things. War is awful. Hamas started that war, but they want to say that it's a genocide and ignore the fact that it was started with an absolutely gruesome massacre that any sovereign nation would have responded to. And I think that Israel, in retrospect, probably responded with more restraint than a lot of other countries, a lot of our allies would have responded. So the idea that the conduct of a country defending itself after October 7th it now constitutes a genocide. Anyone who thinks 3 steps ahead would realize that that would be a problem for America. It would be a problem for America and its allies. But that's the sort of level of the debate we're in, and people can't think past that. And it is extremely frustrating to see that a sizable number of Americans have bought into that garbage.
Now, can you state the facts of what happened at the synagogue? I read the story last night. I posted immediately. Harmeet Dillon has got to dispatch Civil Rights Division lawyers there to investigate because I believe it is not unlike police departments in cities that are indifferent to the rights of their minorities end up under court supervision pursuant to a consent decree. What happened there?
Okay, so there's an organization called Pal Adwa, which earlier in February of this year went to the Orthodox Jewish neighborhood of Barrow Park and did a similar kind of operation, which they said they were flooding Borough Park, and they rely on a lie. Basically, what they said is that the synagogue was hosting something called Nefesh B'Nefesh. That's an organization that exists to help facilitate for Jews that would like to emigrate to Israel or make Aliyah, the sort of details in the process for doing that. It is not an organization that is, as they claimed, selling stolen Palestinian land. It was not a sale of any land at all in the synagogue event. So they spread the lie, and then they bring people to basically kind of form a menacing mob that swarms the people that are walking into the temple. That to me is so deeply un-American. It violates that our a fundamental principle of who we are as a country, which is religious liberty, that we are a place where you can worship freely and, without the threat of some other group. So that itself is breaking a social compact. But the real problem, because they're always going to be nutbags, the real problem is the incoming mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani, put out an equivocation kind of statement where he said he tone policed this radical organization that called for this protest, saying, I wouldn't have used that language, gave lip service to the idea that people should kind of, go to their house of worship in peace, but then said, and houses of worship should not be used for events that violate international law, which is unbelievable. By putting that out there, what he's doing is he's laundering the lie of this organization. And it's a signal. He doesn't want to really offend groups that believe that social justice means yelling at pious religious Jews on their way to synagogue. I am utterly offended. Shame on Zohran Mamdani. And sadly, I think it's a symbol of what's coming.
Now, what do you think of by the way, it is illegal everywhere to assault someone. Yep. Assault doesn't mean touching. It means the imminent fear of an unpermitted touching. So I think the synagogue goers were assaulted. But I also believe if you have systemic bias in any police department or its leadership at the level of elected officials, you end up in court facing a consent decree. Normally it's white cops, black population, but it would fit to any civil rights. I would like to see this investigation begun in New York City. I think we have a predicate.
Well, I would not. I actually don't. I'm against that because I don't like the consent decrees usually. They've been abused by past Justice Departments. And Jessica Tisch, I do think, is trying to do the right thing right now. And at least for now, Mamdani has kept her on. However, this organization, Pal Adwa of New York and New Jersey, they should absolutely come under the microscope of the Justice Department because I would like to know where they're getting their money from. They're a 501c3 nonprofit, and this is what they do. They organized rallies to go into Jewish neighborhoods, into Jewish synagogues, and try to harass and intimidate Jews as they're on their way to services. So I would like to know more about where they get their money from. I've started doing a little research on them. They are connected to an organization called Samadoun. They praised October 7th multiple times on their social media. They're not for two states. They're for one state. They're on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eli, always good talking to you. We are expecting my breaking history for the long Thanksgiving holiday before it begins. Follow me at Eli Lake, and by all means, like and subscribe to Breaking History. Subscribe to the Free Press and come right back for Continental on the Hugh Hewitt Show.